My name is George Severs. I'm a PhD student in the Faculty of History and at Selwyn College, where I'm working on a history of HIV/AIDS activism in England between 1982 and 1997. In my undergraduate degree, there was an option in the second year to do a bit of independent study, and I was really keen to do something that was focused on LGBT history, and the options for that were pretty sparse. So I decided I would take a course on the far right, and was looking at why it was that the British National Party in the 80s and 90s had anti-gay views. And as part of that, I first started to research the HIV/AIDS epidemic. I researched queer studies in part, I suppose, as a result of a desire to see oneself in the curriculum and in the research that one does, but also I think there's a wider desire to see diversity within the curriculum and within research. And I think this is a really exciting moment to be doing that, because we're starting to see much more diversity, both in what people are researching across the board, but here at the University of Cambridge, and also in what they're teaching as a result of that research. So that motivates me in the research I do into queer studies. In a way, no. I feel that I've had an incredibly supportive time researching queer studies. I've had very supportive supervisors. I think one of the challenges that remains is that with the advent of local government cuts and cuts to services that affect archives, we see much more localised, smaller scale queer studies at risk, because the materials are either not getting to local archives, or local archives aren't open for sufficient lengths of time to allow graduate students on limited resources the chance to go and research that. So we'll end up, possibly, if this carries on, with queer histories and queer studies being written that are focused very, very wholly on large metropolitan areas like London and Manchester. So that is a real challenge that affects not just me, but everybody researching queer history and queer studies. I think another challenge that faces people doing especially queer history is the challenge of anachronism. So whether it's fair or legitimate to impose a term that we use very commonly now, whether it's trans or lesbian or gay, onto a society in the past, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But as much as that is a challenge, I think it's more of an opportunity for us as historians to think through the issues of how much we can play with our sources, how much the sources can stretch, and how much the sources speak to us today. So challenging though it is, I think it's more of an opportunity and can be a great teaching resource for students to think through their relationship to historical sources and their relationship to the past. I think it's important to have a queer curriculum for two main reasons. The first is it's really important for queer students being taught these subjects to see themselves in the curriculum, to feel empowered by that, and to feel inspired by their pasts, and to see themselves in the past. It's also really important because LGBT people, queer people, are present across all societies and across all temporal, times and spaces. And yet the current curriculum here at the university, or across universities, does not reflect that. So it's just a case of having a curriculum that reflects more accurately the queer past. In a word, collaboratively, I think queering the curriculum is something that can only happen meaningfully if it arises from a dialogue between scholars and students and community members and activists. I think we're seeing this writ large with the blue plaques that are being put up by activists across London, which are forcing the issue, putting up plaques across what would otherwise be fairly innocuous buildings, and saying, actually, this amazing LGBT or queer event or happened here, or this person lived here, right? This is something that's being activist-led. So I think what we as a university and researchers should be doing is having more meaningful conversations across different communities, whether it's community members, NGOs, activists, and involving our students, because as we've seen recently with strike action and across many different issues, students are often at the forefront of radical changes to the university. So we need to make sure this is a collaborative dialogue, and as long as we have that dialogue and recognise the other various forces such as class and race and ethnicity that are stopping other community members and individuals from being represented, whether it's representation in the university or in the curriculum, having that collaborative dialogue will help us to more accurately and more inclusively queer the curriculum.